Mysterious photograph. This strange photograph that was submitted in a paranormal group captured far more than a simple family gathering. According to the family who shared it, the image was taken during a backyard get-together held 6 months after their mother had peacefully departed. It was the first time the entire family had been together since then, and the moment carried a mixture of healing and emotion. Dozens of photos were taken that day, yet only one displayed something extraordinary: the unmistakable outline of a figure standing among the relatives. The figure appeared in the background, positioned near the path behind the table. Although slightly blurred, the shape resembled an older woman with white hair, a soft expression, and the familiar posture that the family instantly recognized. What shocked them most was that no one over 40 years old had attended the gathering. The family insisted that no one present matched the figure's appearance, clothing, or height. It was as if someone had quietly stepped into the scene just for the photo and then vanished without a trace. When the family compared the mysterious figure to a photograph of their mother, the similarity was undeniable. The hair, the stance, even the gentle way she appeared to hold her hands, every detail aligned perfectly with the woman they loved. For them, this was not an illusion or a trick of light. It felt like a brief moment of presence, a comforting sign that she had joined them during a time when her absence was felt most deeply. The strange case of Marcia Ann Ryan. In August of 1996, 33-year-old Marcia Ann Ryan made a sudden and uncharacteristic decision that would mark the beginning of one of Australia's most haunting disappearance cases. Without warning, she chose to drive to her parents' holiday home in Queensland, a destination nearly 20 hours away from her residence in Seaford, Victoria. Although Marcia was known for her reliability, level-headedness, and structured nature, something had shifted inside her in the days leading up to her strange departure. Her loved ones sensed it immediately. Her behavior had changed, and she appeared increasingly paranoid, unsettled, and fearful for reasons she did not explain clearly. What no one knew at the time was that Marcia and her devoted dog Ziggy would vanish somewhere along the route, leaving behind an abandoned vehicle, scattered belongings, and a trail of unexplained sightings that only deepened the mystery. Marcia was born on the 19th of July 1963, the youngest of 5 children, to her parents John and Johanna. She was remembered as intelligent, perfectionistic, honest, and deeply loyal. She enjoyed outdoor activities, especially scuba diving, and had built a life filled with steady work, family connections, and independence. However, her 20s had been far more turbulent. She endured a harmful relationship while quietly struggling with substance use, a combination that eventually led to a distressing episode of drug-induced psychosis. After receiving medical care in hospital, she committed to recovery and entered a rehabilitation program. From that point onward, she rebuilt her life with determination. She left her harmful partner, moved back to Victoria, and joined her aunt and uncle's transport business, where she earned a reputation for being hardworking and dependable. As she moved into her 30s, she had recovered her confidence and stability, living peacefully in her own home with Ziggy, her loyal healer border collie mix. Everything changed in August of 1996, when Marcia made the unusual decision to accept a boarder into her home. The man, named Stephen, stayed only a short time before she abruptly asked him to leave. According to Marcia's mother, she appeared genuinely frightened of him, though her father believed she may have been uncomfortable simply because she had lived alone for years. Stephen himself later claimed he lived with her for an entire month, not a matter of days, and insisted that they had gotten along well. Whatever the truth, Marcia's behavior shifted dramatically after he entered her life. She began expressing fears that seemed to center around him and confided to family that she believed he was placing feathers and bones in her backyard as part of some form of hex. These were fears she had never expressed before and did not align with her established personality. Those closest to her realized something was profoundly wrong. On the 19th of August, Marcia left work early, telling her manager she felt unwell. This happened to coincide with Stephen's eviction day. Her brother Mark came to the house to support her and stayed until nearly 11 that night. Only 15 minutes after he left, Marcia phoned her parents at their Surfers Paradise holiday home and told them she was driving there to stay with them for several weeks. Her parents were caught off guard. It was not like Marcia to spontaneously take extended time off work, nor to embark on a journey of over 1,200 miles without preparation. More strangely, police later determined she did not make that call from her home, though she had already left by then. The purpose of her departure, just like the fear that seemed to be guiding her, remained unexplained. Before beginning her long coastal drive, Marcia made an odd detour, traveling 45 minutes to Camberwell to withdraw $50 from an ATM. The decision baffled investigators and her family alike. Why would she travel so far for such a small withdrawal? Whether she met someone or made some other stop during this detour has never been determined. With Ziggy in the car beside her, Marcia headed north, but she ran out of petrol before getting far and pulled over near a 24-hour service station in Yallourn. It was late at night when a Safeway truck driver noticed her walking along the Prince's Highway at 11:50 in the evening. She appeared distressed and was walking toward Morwell, strangely, away from the station and her car. When he offered assistance, she told him firmly to leave her alone. He interpreted her fear as caution toward a stranger and drove on. This would become the final confirmed sighting of Marcia Ryan. At 2:48 in the morning, a police patrol spotted Marcia's car on the side of the highway. No one was in or near the vehicle. When Marcia's family had not heard from her after 3 days, her brother Tony went to her house and discovered 15 unanswered messages. One was from the police, warning that her vehicle would soon be towed. Another was from a caller who had found her wallet scattered across the Princess Highway in Darnham, 12 miles from Yallourn. The wallet appeared to have been tossed from a moving vehicle, with its contents forming a line along the road. Nothing had been stolen. Oddly, Marcia appeared not to have packed for her trip at all. Her toothbrush and basic supplies remained in the house. When Tony went to retrieve her car, police could not locate the keys, despite stating they had been found inside the vehicle. Instead, they handed him a coat hanger to unlock the door. Marcia's brother was troubled by the location of the vehicle, pulled over in a precarious place flanked by steep cliffs on both sides. As days passed, the mystery only deepened. Searches were launched across 3 states, Victoria, Queensland, and Tasmania, spanning bushland, rural areas, and highways. Police, volunteers, SES members, cadaver dogs, and helicopters scoured the land. Sightings came in from multiple locations, some claiming she was seen with 2 unknown men, but no trace of Marcia or Ziggy was ever found. To this day, the disappearance of Marcia Ann Ryan remains one of Australia's most unsettling unsolved mysteries. She left behind no clear explanation, no pattern of behaviour that could account for her fear, and no physical evidence revealing her final movements. The unsolved mystery of Jim Donnelly. Jim Donnelly, a 43-year-old process engineer, vanished without a trace on June 21, 2004. His disappearance remains one of New Zealand's most baffling mysteries, with no conclusive evidence explaining what happened to him. Nearly 2 decades later, his wife, Tracy Donnelly, continues her relentless search for answers, believing that the key to his fate lies within the steel mill where he was last seen. Jim arrived at his workplace, the Glenbrook Steel Mill, as usual that Monday morning. There were no signs that anything was amiss at first. However, he never attended his meeting at 9 in the morning, raising concern among his colleagues. His car remained parked in the mill's lot, untouched, and his wife, Tracy, was unable to reach him. By 6 in the evening, after an entire workday had passed with no sign of him, Jim was officially reported missing. Initially, the theory that Jim had suffered an accident seemed plausible. The steel mill was a hazardous environment, full of dangerous equipment and chemicals. However, as the investigation progressed, this theory gave way to more questions than answers. Despite extensive searches, including a thorough sweep of the mill's premises, no trace of Jim's body was found. There was no clear evidence that he had left the facility, yet no explanation for where he could have gone. In the days leading up to his disappearance, Jim had been acting out of character. He and Tracy had planned a weekend getaway in Auckland, but Jim abruptly cancelled, claiming he had an important meeting. His reasoning made little sense to Tracy. A Saturday night meeting seemed highly unusual, yet Jim refused to provide any details. Adding to the mystery, he rented a suit for the occasion, but no one has ever been able to confirm where he went or who he met that evening. His co-workers also noted his strange behavior on the Monday before he disappeared, further deepening the mystery surrounding his final known hours. The mystery took an even darker turn 5 days after Jim was last seen. Mill workers discovered his hard hat near an acid tank in a restricted area of the facility, an area that had already been searched. The discovery immediately raised suspicions. Why had the hard hat only appeared after nearly a week? The acid tank was drained, revealing some of Jim's personal belongings inside. However, the acid was not strong enough to dissolve a body, ruling out the possibility that Jim had completely disappeared into the chemical solution. His house keys were missing and have never been found. The presence of Jim's belongings in the acid tank raised more questions than answers. Who placed them there? And why was his hard hat left in plain sight near the tank days after he vanished? The hard hat, which could have held valuable forensic evidence, was never tested for fingerprints, a glaring oversight in the investigation. The lack of a thorough forensic examination meant that any potential evidence was lost forever. As the investigation stalled, theories emerged to explain Jim's disappearance. Some speculated that he had suffered a mental breakdown and intentionally vanished. Search and rescue teams considered the possibility that he was hiding, avoiding detection. However, this theory seemed unlikely. Jim had no known history of mental illness, and his sudden disappearance left behind too many unresolved questions. Tracy has never accepted the idea that Jim simply walked away. She remains convinced that the answers to his fate are hidden within the steel mill. If Jim had been harmed, it is possible that those responsible took steps to cover their tracks. The suspicious placement of his belongings and the lack of evidence indicating he left the facility suggest foul play. However, without a body or any definitive proof, the case remains unsolved. Over the years, Tracy has continued to push for answers, hoping that someone will come forward with new information. Jim's disappearance is not widely known outside of New Zealand, but for those familiar with the case, it remains one of the country's most enduring mysteries. A father of 2 vanished without a trace, and nearly 2 decades later, his family is still searching for the truth. The case of Jim Donnelly is a chilling reminder of how a person can disappear in the most inexplicable of circumstances. His wife's belief that the key to the mystery lies within the steel mill is a haunting thought, as it suggests that someone within the facility may know more than they have admitted. With no sightings of Jim beyond the gantry of the mill, and no evidence of him leaving, the truth of what happened that day remains locked behind the walls of the very place he worked. To this day, the disappearance of Jim Donnelly remains unsolved. The hard hat and personal belongings found in the acid tank are the only physical traces of his existence that morning. His car remains untouched, his phone left behind, and his last known movements remain a mystery. The question that lingers, unanswered, is what really happened to Jim Donnelly on June 21, 2004. Missing skier mysteriously disappears without a trace, then turns up thousands of miles away without any memory of what happened. Konstantinos Philippidis, known as Danny, was a 49-year-old Toronto firefighter who mysteriously vanished while skiing at Whiteface Mountain in Wilmington, New York, in February 2018. His disappearance sparked a massive search effort involving hundreds of firefighters, state police, and volunteers. 6 days later, he was found alive more than 4,500 kilometers away in Sacramento, California, still wearing his ski gear and with no recollection of how he had traveled across the country. The bizarre case of his vanishing and sudden reappearance remains one of the strangest unsolved mysteries in recent years. On February 7, 2018, Philippidis was enjoying the final day of an annual ski trip with off-duty and retired firefighters. The group had been skiing at Whiteface Mountain, one of the highest peaks in the Adirondacks, known for its dense wooded areas, steep trails, and challenging terrain. Around 2:30 in the afternoon, one of the skiers in the group expressed fatigue and decided to head back, but Philippidis insisted on making one last run down the mountain. His friends waited for him at the lodge, but when a sudden snowstorm hit, visibility worsened. By 4 in the afternoon, the ski lifts had shut down, and Philippidis was still nowhere to be found. His friends waited another 30 minutes before they became concerned and reported him missing. They returned to the lodge where they were staying, hoping he had already made it back, but his car, passport, phone, and ID were all still there. A search operation was immediately launched, with ski patrol, forest rangers, and local authorities scouring the area. As night fell, conditions worsened, making the search difficult, but rescuers remained hopeful. The following day, the search effort expanded. New York State Police, Homeland Security, US border officials, and over 100 Toronto firefighters joined in, determined to locate their missing colleague. Helicopters, drones, and sniffer dogs were deployed to cover the snowy terrain. As days passed, the likelihood of finding Philippidis alive diminished. His wife traveled to Lake Placid, desperate for answers. Over 6 days, an estimated 6,000 people participated in the search. Despite the extensive effort, no trace of him was found. Then, on February 13th, hope was unexpectedly restored. At 9:30 in the morning, Philippidis' wife received a call from an unknown number. When she answered, she was shocked to hear her husband's voice. He told her he was in Sacramento, California, alone and disoriented. She immediately urged him to seek help. He hung up and dialed 911, informing police that he was a missing person. Sacramento police officers arrived at the airport's car rental terminal, where they found Philippidis still dressed in the ski jacket, boots, and helmet he had worn when he went missing 6 days earlier. He appeared confused and disoriented. Along with his ski gear, he was carrying a newly purchased iPhone, a credit card, and $1,000 in cash. He also had a fresh haircut. When questioned, he struggled to recall what had happened, offering only vague details about possibly suffering a head injury and sleeping frequently in a truck during his journey. Authorities transported him to a hospital for evaluation, but doctors found no significant injuries or signs of trauma. Sergeant Sean Hampton of the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department stated that officers interviewed Philippidis extensively and determined he was not under the influence of drugs or alcohol. His recollections were hazy, but he mentioned being dropped off in Sacramento the night before and possibly spending the night near Richards Boulevard before making his way to the airport. As news of his discovery spread, speculation ran rampant. Investigators sought information about how he had traveled across the country, but no one came forward with answers. Authorities released a photograph of Philippidis at the airport in hopes of finding someone who had seen him during his 6-day absence. Despite their efforts, the mystery deepened. 6 months later, Philippidis provided his version of events. He believed he had taken a wrong turn while heading back to the lodge and lost consciousness. When he regained awareness, he mistakenly assumed he had arrived at the main ski lodge, only to find it deserted. It was later determined that he likely wandered near the children's ski slope, an area that would have been largely abandoned at the time. Still confused and unable to locate his car, Philippidis flagged down a truck driver who offered him a ride. He remembered little of the journey, but had brief flashes of being sick at a truck stop and learning that they were passing through Utah. He described experiencing an intense headache and extreme fatigue that left him unable to stay awake. Eventually, the truck driver told him they had reached the end of the line in Sacramento before dropping him off. After arriving in Sacramento, Philippidis was still disoriented, but realized he needed to contact his family. With no ID and only a credit card, he withdrew $1,000 in cash and purchased a new iPhone. Struggling to recall his wife's phone number, he searched for information about Whiteface Mountain online. To his shock, he discovered that he was listed as a missing person. Instead of immediately contacting authorities, he spent the night on the streets before finally calling his wife the next morning. To this day, Philippidis' case remains a mystery. The identity of the truck driver has never been confirmed, and no witnesses have come forward to explain how he traveled across the country. The lack of any explanation leaves more questions than answers. Was he suffering from a dissociative episode, or was something more mysterious at play? Despite returning to his family and resuming his life as a firefighter, Philippidis' 6-day journey remains a baffling mystery. His case has intrigued investigators and skeptics alike, as it defies logical explanation. With no concrete evidence or additional witnesses, his inexplicable disappearance and reappearance will likely remain one of the most bizarre unsolved cases in modern history. The mysterious vanishing of Stephanie Stewart. Stephanie Stewart's disappearance remains one of the most perplexing and chilling mysteries in Canada. A dedicated fire lookout worker, she spent her summers on the edge of Jasper National Park, a breathtaking yet remote location where she diligently monitored the landscape for signs of fire. Despite her age of 70, Stephanie was in excellent physical condition, an avid outdoors woman who had even conquered Mount Kilimanjaro the year before. Her passion for nature and commitment to her job made her sudden disappearance in August 2006 all the more baffling. On the evening of August 25, 2006, Stephanie spoke with a relative at 9 in the evening in what would be her last known interaction. The following morning, she failed to check in at her scheduled time, an immediate cause for concern. When further attempts to contact her went unanswered, her colleagues alerted authorities. By 9 in the morning, a search effort was already underway. Given her years of experience and familiarity with the terrain, it seemed unlikely that she had simply wandered off or gotten lost. The circumstances surrounding her vanishing pointed to something far more sinister. A massive search operation was launched, covering hundreds of kilometers by foot, boat, and aircraft. Authorities scoured the rugged landscape, hoping to find any trace of Stephanie, but their efforts turned up nothing. As the days stretched on, investigators began piecing together a disturbing picture. Certain personal items were found to be missing from her lookout post, including 2 pillows, a burgundy bedsheet, a brown Navajo-patterned duvet, and a gold Wittnauer men's watch. These missing items, along with the complete absence of any physical evidence like footprints or signs of a struggle, deepened the mystery. 3 days after Stephanie was reported missing, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, officially stated that her disappearance was suspicious. The idea that she had voluntarily left or succumbed to natural causes seemed increasingly implausible. The remote nature of her lookout station meant that very few people would have had access to her location. If foul play was involved, the perpetrator would have had to navigate difficult terrain and operate undetected. Theories ranged from a random attack to a planned act by someone familiar with her routine. Authorities soon classified the case as a probable homicide. However, without any physical evidence or eyewitness accounts, the investigation stalled. Despite the government and her union offering a $20,000 reward for information leading to an arrest, no credible leads emerged. The absence of her missing belongings added an eerie element to the case. Were they taken as trophies, or did they hold some significance to the person responsible for her disappearance? Stephanie's case remains open, with investigators still seeking answers. Over the years, speculation has continued to swirl. Some believe she may have encountered an opportunistic predator, while others think she was targeted by someone who knew her. With no signs of forced entry or an apparent struggle, the case defies conventional explanations. For her family, friends, and colleagues, the lack of closure is a lingering wound. Stephanie Stewart's disappearance is a chilling reminder of how even those most prepared for the wilderness can vanish without a trace. The mysterious Highway of Tears. The Highway of Tears is a tragic and haunting stretch of Highway 16 in British Columbia, Canada. Spanning 719 kilometers between Prince George and Prince Rupert, this remote corridor has been the site of numerous crimes, particularly against women, since the highway's completion in 1970. The phrase, Highway of Tears, was first coined in 1998 during a vigil in Terrace, British Columbia, by Florence Natsiel, who reflected on the sorrow of the families who had lost loved ones along the highway. Over the years, this stretch of road has become infamous due to the disappearances of many women, most of whom were Indigenous. The disproportionate number of Indigenous women who have gone missing along the Highway of Tears has drawn attention to the broader issue of violence against Indigenous communities in Canada. Many of these cases remain unsolved, leaving families without answers and communities without justice. The crisis along the highway is closely linked to the Missing Indigenous Women movement, which seeks to raise awareness about the failures that have allowed these crimes to continue largely unchecked. One of the factors contributing to the danger of the highway is its isolation. The vast, unpopulated stretches make it an easy place for predators to target vulnerable individuals, particularly those who rely on hitchhiking due to a lack of affordable transportation. Many communities along the route have limited access to public transit, leaving residents, especially young women, with little choice but to accept rides from strangers. This has made them easy targets for perpetrators who take advantage of the remoteness of the highway. The Canadian government and law enforcement agencies have faced significant criticism for their handling of the disappearances along the Highway of Tears. For decades, Indigenous families and activists have called for more thorough investigations and better resources to protect vulnerable women traveling along the route. In many cases, reports of missing Indigenous women were not taken seriously, and law enforcement was slow to respond. The lack of urgency in addressing these crimes has been widely condemned as a failure of the justice system. Several initiatives have been launched to address the crisis. In 2006, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police began an investigation focused on cases along the Highway of Tears that fit a specific pattern. The project originally investigated 9 cases, but later expanded to include 18. While some progress has been made, many of the cases remain unresolved. Additionally, the National Inquiry into Missing Indigenous Women and Girls, launched in 2016, highlighted the neglect that has contributed to the ongoing crisis. Community-driven efforts have also played a crucial role in raising awareness and demanding justice. Families of the victims have organized marches, vigils, and awareness campaigns to keep the memory of their loved ones alive and to pressure authorities to take action. Grassroots organizations have worked to provide support for Indigenous women and their families, offering resources such as safe transportation options and emergency shelters. Despite these efforts, the Highway of Tears remains a dangerous place. The need for improved infrastructure, including better transportation options and increased law enforcement presence, is critical in preventing further tragedies. Many advocates argue that the government must take more substantial steps to address the root causes of why this is happening against Indigenous women, including poverty and lack of access to essential services. The Highway of Tears stands as a grim symbol of the ongoing violence against Indigenous women in Canada. The stories of the victims and their families serve as a painful reminder of the injustices that continue to exist. The mystery of David Stone. David Lawrence Stone was a 29-year-old stock market analyst from La Jolla, California, whose mysterious disappearance and tragic fate continue to intrigue those who study unexplained cases. He was a man known to seek spiritual guidance through the New Age movement, which emphasizes self-discovery and harmony of the mind, body, and spirit. This aspect of his life became a crucial element in the investigation after he vanished, leaving behind cryptic clues in the vast New Mexico desert. Stone had a history of anger and control issues, and in the days leading up to his disappearance, these struggles became more pronounced. Just 3 days before Halloween in 1988, he had a significant emotional outburst, after which he told his family and friends that he needed time to clear his mind. Without offering any details about his plans, he got into his car on Halloween morning and drove away, leaving his loved ones uncertain of his destination or intentions. What followed was a strange journey that led him deep into the remote deserts of Arizona and New Mexico, where his final days became the subject of much speculation. The investigation into his disappearance was conducted by Sheriff Bill Cavalier, who pieced together Stone's movements based on witness accounts and the evidence he left behind. Stone was last seen walking into the desert, about 145 miles east of Tucson, Arizona, heading toward the New Mexico border. His journey took him so far that he eventually reached a rural area of New Mexico, where he was spotted by a local farmer. The farmer found it odd to see a lone traveler walking through such an isolated region and approached Stone to ask what he was doing. Stone's response was cryptic. He told the farmer that he was searching for the beast. Other witnesses in the area also reported seeing him wandering alone, muttering to himself, and exhibiting strange behavior. His actions suggested that he was either deeply immersed in a spiritual quest or experiencing a psychological episode. He left behind a trail of clues that reinforced the idea that he may have been on what New Age practitioners call a vision quest, a personal journey meant to bring enlightenment or spiritual awakening. On November 5th, authorities found Stone's car abandoned along an empty stretch of New Mexico Highway 80, south of Road Forks. The circumstances surrounding his abandoned vehicle were strange, but they became even more puzzling when investigators found a series of symbols and objects nearby. Among these clues was a carefully arranged pyramid of rocks encircled by a triangle. Stone's watch and 2 quarters were also found nearby. Later, searchers discovered a sequence of Fibonacci numbers written in the sand, a mathematical pattern frequently used by stock market analysts. However, Stone had made an apparent mistake in the sequence, writing 18 instead of 21, a detail that some believe was a reference to his football jersey number from his college years. Despite extensive search efforts, no trace of Stone himself was found at the time, and his family was left to wonder what had become of him. His disappearance remained an unsolved mystery for nearly 4 years, during which speculation ran wild. Some believed he had succumbed to the harsh desert conditions, while others suggested he may have staged his disappearance as part of a larger spiritual journey. In February of 1992, the mystery took a tragic turn when Stone's skeletal remains were discovered in the desert near Granite Gap, New Mexico, not far from where his abandoned car and cryptic clues had been found years earlier. His identity was confirmed through medical records, but no evidence of foul play was detected. The cause of his passing remains unknown, as the elements had long since erased any conclusive forensic evidence. The circumstances surrounding Stone's disappearance and passing remain one of the most perplexing mysteries of its kind. Why did he leave behind such strange clues? His reference to searching for the beast and his erratic behavior suggest that he may have been battling something internally, whether it was a personal demon or a spiritual pursuit gone too far. Even though his remains were eventually found, many questions about his final days remain unanswered. Did he simply get lost and succumb to the elements? Or did his journey into the desert have a deeper, more symbolic meaning known only to him? The eerie clues he left behind continue to fuel speculation about his state of mind and what he may have been seeking in the remote New Mexico wilderness. To this day, the story of David Lawrence Stone is a chilling reminder of how easily someone can disappear, even in an age of modern technology and widespread communication. His case stands as one of the more mysterious disappearances, leaving behind an unsettling mystery that remains open-ended, with no clear answers to the many questions surrounding his fate. The mysterious disappearance of Carl Herbert Landers from Mount Shasta. Carl Herbert Landers, a 69-year-old man from Orinda, California, set out on May 21, 1999, with the goal of summiting Mount Shasta, a towering peak located north of Sacramento. Accompanied by 2 close friends, Milton Gaines and Barry Gilmore, both members of the Orinda Roadrunners, Landers was prepared for a challenging but rewarding climb. He was an experienced outdoorsman and had trained for the expedition, making his sudden and complete disappearance all the more baffling. Landers and his friends camped at Lake Helen, an 8,800-foot elevation site commonly used by climbers attempting to summit Mount Shasta. The group planned to take a gradual approach, acclimating themselves to the altitude before making their final push to the summit. However, Landers began to feel unwell at the camp. His 2 companions suggested that he take an early start on the hike while they caught up with him later. They assumed he would move at a slower pace due to his condition, giving them time to overtake him before reaching the summit. That was the last time anyone ever saw him. When Landers failed to return to base camp or show any signs of making contact, concern quickly grew. His 2 friends began searching for him, but found no indication of where he had gone. When he did not reappear, local authorities were contacted, and a full-scale search operation was launched. Despite the swift response, no evidence of Landers' whereabouts could be found. The search effort was extensive, involving professional mountain rescue teams and experienced searchers who were familiar with Mount Shasta's terrain. The operation was led by veteran search and rescue expert Grizz Adams, who had over 20 years of experience in locating missing hikers. Multiple agencies participated, including the U.S. Forest Service, local sheriff's offices, and volunteer groups. A California Highway Patrol helicopter, equipped with an infrared sensing device, was deployed to scan the rugged landscape for any heat signatures that might indicate Landers' location. 2 National Guard helicopters were also brought in to assist in covering the vast and treacherous terrain. Searchers combed through trails, cliffs, and crevices, following every possible lead. They scoured the likely paths Landers would have taken, checked dangerous fall zones, and inspected creeks and snowfields. Volunteers and fellow hikers joined the search, hoping to find any clue that might explain what happened to him. Despite these exhaustive efforts, no trace of Landers was ever found. There were no footprints, discarded items, or any signs that he had wandered off the main trail. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Landers' disappearance remains one of the most perplexing mysteries associated with Mount Shasta. The region has long been the subject of folklore and strange occurrences, with reports of unexplained disappearances dating back decades. Some speculate that Mount Shasta's unpredictable weather conditions or hidden crevasses could have swallowed landers, but given the extensive search efforts, it remains unclear why no evidence was ever discovered. His case bears eerie similarities to the disappearance of John Nezza, an 80-year-old climber who vanished on Mount Shasta on July 17, 1965. Nezza was a seasoned climber who had summited the mountain over 40 times. On the day he disappeared, he left most of his gear behind at the Sierra Club cabin at Horse Camp, intending to complete what should have been a routine climb. Last seen near Lake Helen, the same area where Landers was last spotted, Nezza disappeared without a trace. Searchers at the time followed reports of buzzards circling the Red Banks area above Lake Helen, believing they might be scavenging remains, but nothing was ever found. Despite similarities between their disappearances, no concrete connection has been established between Landers and Nezza's cases. Both men were experienced climbers and were last seen in the same general area, yet no definitive explanation exists for what happened to them. Some believe that the high-altitude environment and treacherous terrain of Mount Shasta may conceal dangers that make recovery efforts nearly impossible. Others suggest that disorientation or altitude sickness could have played a role, leading them to wander into inaccessible regions of the mountain. Over the years, Mount Shasta has developed a reputation for unusual disappearances, leading to speculation beyond natural causes. Some theories involve hidden underground caves, sudden weather changes, or even supernatural elements that have long been associated with the mountain. While such ideas remain speculative, the complete lack of physical evidence in cases like Landers' disappearance fuels the mystery. Even after 25 years, not a single clue has surfaced regarding what happened to Landers. His family and friends have been left without answers, and those who participated in the search remain haunted by the fact that an experienced hiker could disappear so completely despite an extensive and immediate search effort. To this day, Carl Landers' disappearance remains one of the most baffling cases in Mount Shasta's history. It serves as a stark reminder of the unpredictability of nature and the unknown forces that sometimes surround those who venture into the wilderness.